with my dad, we always end up arguing because my dad's just like he wants borders. He wants more prisons. He wants harder sentences on drugs. And as a criminal justice major, I'm just like, that doesn't prevent crime. Growing up, I was always the rebel in the family. Like, my dad, he antes era muy abusivo conmigo. And it's the same thing. Like, kind of like the Indian boarding schools, like that whole experience of you're not acting the way you're supposed to act, the way society wants you to act. So te chingan or te pegan, and it's just like they're stripping your true, authentic self out of you, and it's just like I don't blame him for him because I used to hate him I used to hate him a long time. I used to hate him so much, like, but it stopped already. He's improved. He's ya no es tan abusivo como antes, pero mi mamá lo paró y le trató de decirle que si otra vez me pegaba, le iba a llamar a la policía. And we already know what happens when you call the police. You get deported, you know? So my dad stopped, and I learned by myself to forgive him. And when I went to school here, I started learning like why my dad acts the way he does. And then my dad still gives me shit, like, ¿por qué te vistes como un hombre? ¿Por qué te vistes así? O no tienes otra ropa que ponerte, tienes la ropa de tu novio, like, it just pisses him off. Y luego when I got my first tattoos, he was so mad because both my parents are against tattoos, but my mom is more lenient. So I remember when I got my tattoo and I was hiding it for months, and then estaba lavando los trastes and I was wearing a t-shirt, and my dad just like didn't even notice that I had my tattoo because I had a t-shirt. But then once we sat down on the table and started eating, that's when he saw it, and he was so mad. He was like, "Estás bien loca, ¿por qué te poniste este tatuaje? Eres chola, que," you know, because tattoos have been criminalized because of white supremacy culture. But that's just me, like, reclaiming my identity as a complex, like, pan-indigenous, two-spirit person, because tattoos to me is like a reminder of like who I am and how much resistance we've come through, because it's been like over 500 years of resistance. And even though since like 1492 and 1519, when colonizers came to the Americas and are constantly taking who we are, my parents, especially my dad, they're still reproducing that same thing that colonization does. So it was really hard for me to realize that, and it's just crazy that my dad's still like that. Like, he is against abortion. Like, I'm just like, my dad is so conservative, like, how? But then it's like, I know why, and he's so dark brown, and I don't understand, but then it's like, I do understand. But that's my dad. I'm not afraid to be who I want to be, you know, because now that I have the evidence, the theories, the people that study these things that happen to us, because of people like Jimena, Amy, like, they give us the answers to our questions and to our experiences, and it's just like, I knew I wasn't crazy. Like, I knew my gut wasn't lying to me. And I remember when I went to my first powwow, and when I heard the drums, like, I felt it really heavy in my heart and my soul that this is my space, this is where I belong. Even though my parents didn't educate me about like our culture, I had to figure that out on my own. I have to re-educate myself about my indigenous roots. It's just like a plant, you know, like, if you don't water it, it's not gonna grow. And I'm watering it by myself, trying to find myself through my ancestors. And growing up Catholic is also a big problem, because I always knew Catholicism wasn't my religion. And I remember I was forced to get baptized, I did my communion, and then when it was time to do my confirmation, I remember starting to go to the youth meetings at church, and then I told my mom, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, like, I quit, and I made my mom cry. And she was just like, ¿por qué no quieres hacer tu confirmación? ¿Cómo te vas a casar? Necesitas tu certificate para poderte casar, this and that. And I was like, the whole point of confirmation is that you are gonna promise to this God, Jesus, that you're gonna continue the religion with your family, and I don't think I'm gonna continue it. So why would I lie just to make my parents proud, you know? So my mom was disappointed and she cried. And, all my other friends were just like faking it, and I'm like, don't live in the lie. Like, you know, you don't want to. I grew up with the church. I grew up with Catholicism, and there was community because like I knew the people that when we had posadas, when we did Navidad, like in the basement of the church, and we would all like handshake, and we all knew each other. Like, it was a safe space. I think Jesus was actually like a person of color, like Middle Eastern, because me and my partner always had this conversation, and I saw posts on Instagram about like Jesus and how Jesus was a person of color, and he was anti-capitalism, and he helped the people that were outcasted by society. And it's just like, Jesus is a person of color, but the way that capitalism and Christianity and like because of colonization, it's always because of colonization and white supremacy, they made their own narrative to tell people like, this is your Jesus, this is your white savior, so the women's doing this for Jesus, you know, Adam and Eve and the whole like heteronormative stories. So it's just really crazy to think about that, because it's like, I don't believe in it, but I know that Jesus wasn't that Jesus, it's a different Jesus. So it's really complicated. It kind of made me think about my parents' stories, how it was really hard for them to transition from Mexico, leaving their country, leaving their home. And my dad's parents, my grandparents, who I've never met, they're still in Mexico. They're still alive, but for my mom's, they're dead. So my dad hasn't seen his parents over like 20 years probably, because like no tienen papeles. But yeah, I feel like he had to accept what was the dominant culture, the dominant values, beliefs, tradition, in order for him to belong where he is now. And that's why he's the way he is. And I don't blame him, because like we have to, it's really hard to be in spaces where white supremacy is so alive, even though that space doesn't want you, but you want to be part of that space. And in order to be part of that space and thrive in society, you have to be like everyone else, which is, you know, like the way my dad thinks. There's kids of migrants live in LaVille, Hillsborough, Cornelius, Gresham, because I know there's also like Muslims that live in my neighborhood, and like other cultures, but it's dominantly black and like low income, because they have a big like Section 8 program there. That's why a lot of people just stay there. And both my partner's parent, his single mom, and my parents have lived in LaVille for over like 10 years because they can afford it, you know? You can't rent a house with like 3 or 4 rooms because it's like over 1,000 or 2,000 or even more. But if you have Section 8 and you have proof that you're low income, they only charge you 30% of your income. So it's like, that's why they stay there. And because that's the only place that they can afford, they also create their own spaces and their own communities. And it's like, oh, ahí está la vecina, dile que me traiga tomates, o dile que no tengo sal, or vice versa. We create our own spaces while we're also being pushed in those areas as well. And I mean, I do have a community in LaVille and North Portland, but we're very different. Like, ever since I came to Pacific, I've realized that my friends from North Portland are very different from me, because I'm very passionate about social justice, advocacy work, and my friends, they're stuck in the colonial matrix. Nomás están tomando, haciendo drogas, you know, doing things they're not supposed to, or like partying every weekend for no reason. And like, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, to me, it's like, I feel like they're getting lost, and like, where's your purpose in that, you know? Y nomás están gastando dinero en alcohol, drogas, whatever. But that's what the colonial matrix does. It pushes you, and that's what's glammed in social media, you know, like teens tomando, fumando, and nomás, you know, they're just, even though they're like in their 20s, or even teens too, they want to do things that adults do, but because the law criminalizes them, they can't drink until they're 21, you can't smoke until you're 21, but people are still going to break the law, and it doesn't matter, because they want to belong in that like pop culture or hip hop culture from the songs. And the songs, music also has a lot of influence in the way our youth and young adults or young people act. But it's really hard because it's like, it's all part of the colonial matrix, and it's done on purpose, and the system works so well to kind of make the youth, especially youth of color, be lost in those spaces that once something bad happens, like once they get locked up or they get like pregnant, which is like not bad if you want to get pregnant, but like I've noticed that a lot of my community who are younger than me are already having kids. But I don't blame them. It's the systems. Like, not everyone has access to education. And I know there's studies that say that females that are assigned birth that have higher degrees have less chances of getting pregnant versus those that only have high school diplomas or GEDs. They have higher chances of getting pregnant. So it's like they're reproducing and doing what white supremacy wants them to do without them realizing it. Because of representation, lack of role models, like literally all the role models that they like are like artists, like Little Baby or like Cardi B, and there's nothing wrong in idolizing celebrities like that, but like you can't compare or admire someone that have different narratives from you or different privileges from you, you know, or different passions, because like yes, music is like singing instruments, but like not everyone has access to network resources in order for them to thrive like these artists did, you know. And then the things that these artists say, like the lyrics, it's always drugs, sex, violence, like it's always those three, and that's the thing that's glamored in my neighborhood, so they continue to do it. And that it hurts me because that's my community, and that's why it's like, how do I educate my young people of what they're doing is harming themselves and society as a whole? But it's like they don't have access to education because they're low income. They don't have a good GPA because of lack of academic assistance. That's why I'm like very lucky to be here. So I feel like the kids where I work at, because I work at Harkins House, it's a shelter home for minors who are on probation or they went to jail, and we're trying to help them like self-growth, but the system itself where I work is still reproducing harm because it's not collective. They don't have culture responsive art, and I feel like culture and art together makes youth develop self-awareness and how to be better mentors in their life, and also find their role models through artists, the people that do art through social advocacy. So it's like, oh, like damn, this is happening in my community, like I should do something about it. But they don't teach them that stuff. They just teach them like how to cope with stress or how to cope with anger issues, which is good, but like some scenarios are very like, that's not gonna happen because racism in classism, or like that's not true because structural harm that can happen. So it's like a good thing that we're helping them how to develop like social skills and how to be better kids to their parents, but at the same time it's temporary, it's not permanent. And in order to change a youth's life, I feel like you have to teach them something that's going to impact them for the rest of their life, which I believe is art and culture. And if these kids don't know their identities and they're having an identity crisis and they don't know their culture or their roots, they're always going to be lost. And the kids I work with, they do the same thing that the kids from my community, they're like tomando, fumando, you know, just driving, doing things they're not supposed to, but they're just trying things out because they're lost and they don't know their identity. They're just doing what everyone else is doing. So if your artist that you listen to smokes, does Molly, does lean, gangbangs, mata, that's what they're gonna do because that's what what society is telling them to do. It's like a propaganda of like telling kids how they should live their life without the consequences. But the consequences are always there because the laws, like Jimena said, laws are social control and also influence the way we behave. But at the same time, social media also does that too, but without the law part.